Does the gentlewoman from Florida seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House suspend the rules and agree to H.Res.134 as amended.
Clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 134, resolution condemning the government of Iran for its state-sponsored persecution of Bahá'í minority and its continued violation of the international covenants on human rights.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Ross-Layton, and the gentleman from New York, Mr. Engel, will each control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Florida.
I thank the Speaker, and I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and to insert extraneous material into the record on this measure.
Without objection.
I thank the Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentlewoman is recognized for as much time as she wishes to consume.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong support of House Resolution 134, introduced by my good friend and colleague from Illinois, Mr. Dold. House Resolution 134 condemns the Iranian regime's persecution of Iran's Baha'i minority. Baha'i are the largest non-Muslim minority in Iran, numbering over 300,000 members in Iran alone. Mr. Speaker, this resolution marks the 12th congressional action urging the Iranian regime to end its persecution of the Baha'i minority. And still, Baha'is do not have the freedom to practice their religion. In fact, restrictions on Baha'is extend far beyond their religious practices to further restrict their civil rights and their human rights. Many members of the Baha'i faith living in Iran are even subject to harassment, to persecution by the regime, and others, with extensive reports of confiscation of property, restrictions on travel, and raids on Baha'i homes and businesses. The Iranian government continues to arrest and detain Baha'is based on their religious beliefs, with at least 60 cases logged last year alone. The members of the national leadership of Baha'is in Iran, arrested in 2008 and unfairly tried with minimal access to their defense attorneys, are now serving a 20-year sentence for crimes including insulting religious sanctities and propaganda against the regime. The government maintains possession of many Baha'i properties that were seized following the 1979 revolution, including holy places, cemeteries, and historical sites. Many of those properties have now been destroyed. Baha'is are barred from leadership positions in the government and are only permitted to enroll in schools if they do not identify themselves to be Baha'i, and are required to identify as members of another religion in order to register for their entrance examinations. Many Baha'is are denied admission to the universities, and even those who are admitted may face expulsion due to their faith. The Baha'i Institute for Higher Education, established after Baha'is were barred from attending other universities, was declared illegal this year, and 6 educators from that institute are currently imprisoned in Iran. These are just a fraction of the injustices, Mr. Speaker, that the Baha'is face at the hands of the Iranian regime. The regime has sought to make life as a Baha'i in Iran simply unlivable. They seek to take away aspects of everyday life that you and I would consider fundamental, inalienable rights. This resolution draws attention to their plight. It calls on the Iranian regime to end its campaign of abuse against the Baha'is. It condemns the Iranian regime for the persecution of the Baha'is and calls on the regime to immediately release the Baha'is that it wrongfully holds in captivity, including the 7 Baha'i leaders and the 6 Baha'i educators. And it calls for the President and the Secretary to publicly express the same sentiments. Finally, the resolution urges the President and the Secretary of State to use measures already enacted into law under the Comprehensive Iran Sanctions Accountability and Divestment Act of 2010 to sanction Iranian officials responsible for human rights violations against Baha'is and others. Mr. Speaker, I was a co-author of that legislation, and those measures are not here for show. They are there to punish those responsible for these egregious crimes and deter future human rights violations. It is therefore time for the administration to walk the walk and hold the Iranian regime officials, from the so-called supreme leader and Ahmadinejad on down, responsible for their violations of human rights of the Baha'is and other Iranians. I urge my colleagues to support this resolution, and I reserve the balance of our time.
Gentlewoman from Florida reserves her
Pleasure
time.
and an honor to work with her, and I continue to look forward to collaborating with her on all these issues of importance to us. We agree on many, many, many things in the 113th Congress. So, Madam Chairman, I just want to tell you how much we appreciate you on both sides of the aisle. Let me talk about the bill because I think it's important. I agree with everything that the chairwoman said. While the international community is rightfully concerned about Iran's ties to international terrorism and its nuclear weapons program, we cannot forget those who struggle for religious freedom and democracy in Iran. The Baha'i community has long been the target of severe religious persecution by the Iranian regime. Much of its informal leadership has been arrested and many members of the community executed. The Baha'i are not permitted to practice their religion and culture. Their marriages are not recognized. Their dead cannot be buried according to Baha'i law, and their cemeteries are desecrated. In addition, the Baha'i are denied government jobs and business licenses. They are not permitted to enroll in public universities, and Baha'i school children are frequently harassed by classmates, teachers, and administrators. No human being deserves this type of treatment at the hands of their government. The social teachings of the Baha'i faith, such as the equality of women and men and the principle of each individual's responsibility to navigate the truth, are impossible for the theocratic leaders of Iran to comprehend. But these are universal values, human values, and they must be protected. Mr. Speaker, the United States and the international community must not ignore the systematic and violent attacks against the Iranian Baha'i community, and Tehran must be held accountable. By passing this resolution, we shine a light on the persecution of the Baha'i and hopefully move us one step closer to the day that true freedom reaches Iran. I encourage all of my colleagues to support H.Res.134, and I reserve the balance of my time.
New York reserves his time. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my good friend from New York for those kind words. Mr. Engel is a true mensch. That's a good thing. Mr. Speaker, I yield such time as he may consume to the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Dold, who is a member of the Financial Services Committee, the Tom Lantos Congressional Human Rights Committee, and the author of this measure, whom we will miss greatly. Thank you, Mr. Dold.
Well, I think
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I certainly want to thank the chairwoman for her leadership and for her friendship and her work on human rights abuses. Certainly want to thank the ranking member and my friend from New York as well. Mr. Speaker, I've talked at length in this chamber about the human rights abuses taking place inside the country of Iran. In response to this Iranian regime's oppressive rule, we have worked to promote democracy and human rights through a variety of legislative tools. And we have championed measures like the Lautenberg Amendment to offer a lifeline to those individuals who seek nothing more than the freedom they cannot find in their home country. Today, I'm proud to stand here with my colleagues and encourage others to support House Resolution 134, officially condemning the government of Iran for its state-sponsored persecution of its Baha'i religious minority and for the continued violation of human rights. It's time for these continued violations of human rights to be fully exposed and to receive increased international attention. The Baha'i population is Iran's largest non-Muslim religious minority. Over 300,000 Iranians consider themselves part of the Baha'i faith. Yet since the Islamic Revolution of Iran of 1979, members of the Baha'i faith in Iran have faced intense oppression solely because of their religious beliefs. Baha'is are unrecognized under the Iranian constitution, and over 200 Baha'is have been killed in Iran since the revolution. Additionally, Baha'is are wrongfully imprisoned and discriminated against throughout the country. Baha'is are barred from universities, banned from government employment, and excluded from the social pension system unless they deny their religious affiliation. Their marriages are not recognized, their property is confiscated, their holy places and cemeteries have been desecrated. The situation has worsened considerably, Mr. Speaker, in the last year, as the number of Baha'is in prison has roughly doubled, and there have been raids on the Baha'i Institution of Higher Education, an alternative education system that the Baha'i community developed to educate Baha'i youth who are excluded from the state's university system. House Resolution 134 condemns the state-sponsored persecution performed by the Iranian government and calls on it to release the 7 imprisoned Baha'i leaders, 6 imprisoned educators, and all other prisoners held solely on account of their religious beliefs. Additionally, the resolution calls on the President and the Secretary of State to condemn the Iranian government's continued violation of human rights. Finally, the resolution urges the President and the Secretary of State to utilize available measures to sanction officials of the government of Iran and other individuals directly responsible for egregious human rights violations, including against the Baha'i community. Mr. Speaker, in recognition of the importance of this issue, this resolution currently enjoys over 146 bipartisan co-sponsors. On behalf of all those who are concerned about human rights abuses, and on behalf of the Baha'i community in the 10th District of Illinois, which is home to the Baha'i Temple of North America. The beautiful temple in Wilmette is one of only 7, Mr. Speaker, throughout the world. I'd like to encourage my colleagues, my friends, to vote in support of H.Res.134's passage. I thank you, and I thank again the chairwoman for her leadership, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.